Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going after something I know we've all encountered, those beliefs about learning that sound plausible, even common sense, but are they really true?
It's like those urban legends, right? Except instead of alligators in the sewers, it's stuff about how kids learn.
Exactly. And we've got a ton of research to see if these ideas hold water. So get ready to maybe rethink some things you thought you knew.
This is going to be fun.
Let's kick things off with a big one, the digital native. This idea that kids today, just because they've grown up with tech,
They're practically fluent in emoji by the time they can talk.
haha, right. But the idea is that this somehow makes them amazing learners. Like they're supposed to be better at using technology for, well, everything. Some articles even call them Homo sapiens, which I gotta admit sounds kind of cool.
Catchy, but is it accurate? That's where things get interesting. There's been a ton of research on this, and the picture is more complicated than it seems.
So not all sunshine and rainbows with these digital natives then. Spill the tea. What does the research actually say?
Well, studies from universities across the globe are showing these so-called digital natives often have really surface-level tech skills.
So knowing how to, like, make a TikTok is not the same as knowing how to do research for a school paper.
Exactly. Using an iPad to play games is not the same as using it to, say, learn a new language or write code.
Ouch. Yeah, that makes sense. It's easier to assume they're tech wizards, but assuming doesn't make it true, obviously.
And there was this fascinating study, by the way, on Finnish student teachers. They're digital natives born and raised with tech, right?
Yeah, makes sense. Go on.
But the study found their ability to use technology effectively in their teaching was highly questionable.
Wow, okay, so much for that stereotype. It reminds me of that saying, you can lead a horse to water. Just because all this information is out there doesn't mean they automatically know how to use it for learning.
100%. And that actually leads us to this other idea. Researchers call it the butterfly defect.
Butterfly defect. Sounds intriguing. Tell me more.
So, you know how butterflies flutter from flower to flower, kind of all over the place?
Yeah.
Well, it's this tendency to flit between online distractions without any clear purpose. They might look busy, clicking and scrolling, but are they actually learning?
Hold on, you mean those hours I spend going down internet rabbit holes don't actually count as learning?
It depends what you're doing in those rabbit holes, but often.
This is both hilarious and kind of depressing because it's so true. Okay, so much for digital natives being these super learners, but what about their ability to multitask? Because seriously, how do they text, scroll through Instagram, and pretend to do homework all at the same time?
It does seem kind of magical, right? Like they've got special powers we lack.
Right. So what's the deal? Are they really multitasking?
Well, like a magic trick, there's an illusion going on. Our brains, everyone's brains, they're not designed to focus on multiple things at once, especially not complex stuff.
Wait, so when I think I'm multitasking, I'm actually doing what?
Task switching, you're rapidly going back and forth, and each switch has a hidden cost. Your brain has to reorient, refocus, which takes time and energy.
Okay, so that's why I feel so drained after an hour of it. It's like I've actually done something.
Your brain, doing something, just not what you think. It's like juggling. Sure, you keep the balls in the air, but each toss breaks your flow.
And it's not just about being slower. The research actually shows multitasking makes you worse at both things. It's like that study, driving while using your phone, even hands-free.
Oh yeah, scary one.
Turns out it's just as bad as driving drunk.
Sobering thought, isn't it? And the crazy thing is, it's not just driving. It applies to so much. Doctors in the ER, pilots, even pharmacists filling prescriptions. The more we try to do at once, the more likely we are to mess up.
And here's the real kicker, right? They did all this research, and it turns out people who think they're great multitaskers, like they brag about it.
The ones with multitasking ninja on their resume?
Exactly. They actually do the worst at switching between tasks. More distracted, worse at ignoring irrelevant stuff. It's like the opposite of what they think.
The irony is not lost, I assure you. Which, funny enough, brings us to another one of those urban legends of learning styles.
Oh, I've heard about this. Like you're a visual learner or an auditory learner, and if you just find your perfect style, boom, you'll learn anything.
Right, like it's some magical key to unlock your brain.
So what's the problem? This one seems kind of harmless, at least.
Well, the research just doesn't really support it, like, at all. For
Yeah.
one thing, there are so many learning styles out there.
Really? How many are we talking?
Dozens, at least. New ones popping up all the time. It's like impossible to actually test for them all accurately. And even if you could,
It wouldn't matter. Why is that?
Because even if we could stick everyone in their neat little learning style box, how do we know those preferences actually lead to better learning? Turns out, just because you like something.
Doesn't mean it's good for you. Like eating candy for every meal. I mean, I'd enjoy it.
Exactly, and that's what a lot of the research finds with this stuff. Matching teaching to learning styles rarely shows a benefit. Sometimes it's even worse.
Wait, seriously. So forcing a visual learner to like listen to a podcast
Yeah.
might actually be fine.
Might be better in some cases. It's like that saying, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. We get so caught up in these labels, we miss how learning actually
So
happens.
instead of these boxes of visual, auditory, whatever.
We should focus on what we all have in common. That's our brains, right? Our cognitive architecture, how we all process, store, retrieve information.
So stuff that works for everyone, not just someone's preference, which might be wrong anyway. This is making me rethink my whole education.
That's what we're here for. Okay, but let's tackle one more of these learning myths. Because in this day and age, with the internet and all, don't kids have everything they need to just teach themselves?
Oh, right. The self-directed learner. Find it all online. Become an expert. Who needs school? Right.
Right. Except not so fast. Well, there's definitely a place for self-directed learning, and it's awesome to encourage that. There are some big assumptions baked into this idea that just don't hold up.
Like what? Give me the nitty-gritty.
For one thing, it assumes that just because something's online, it's automatically better than older knowledge. Like, we don't need Shakespeare anymore because we have Wikipedia. I don't think so.
Oh, good point. And also, just because kids today grew up with the internet doesn't make them masters of, like, information literacy.
Yeah.
Finding stuff is one thing.
But can they tell if it's true? Can they compare sources, synthesize information, and actually apply what they learn?
Right.
That takes real skills.
Skills you don't get just from scrolling through memes, unfortunately.
Sadly not. And honestly, this lack of information literacy can lead to some, shall we say, interesting situations. I was reading about these students who were supposed to write about Francis Bacon, the scientist.
Okay.
They wrote about Francis Bacon, the philosopher. Completely different guy. And then there were the ones who confused John Wayne, the actor, with John Wayne Gacy, the not-so-nice person. Yikes. Shows you how surface-level knowledge without that deeper understanding can go very wrong.
Yeah, you need that context, that critical thinking to make sense of all this information. It's almost like having the whole world of knowledge at your fingertips.
Can be overwhelming, paralyzing even.
Is that a thing, being paralyzed by too much information?
It's a real thing. It's called the paradox of choice. You'd think having endless options would be amazing, but it can make it harder to choose anything.
Oh my gosh, that's so true. Like when I spend an hour browsing Netflix and end up watching nothing because I'm so overwhelmed. But how does that apply to like actual learning?
Imagine a student, right? They want to learn about, say, climate change. They go online. There's a million websites, videos, articles. It's too much.
Yeah.
Especially without any prior knowledge to even know what they don't know. They get lost, make bad choices, and just give up.
So what's the solution? No more self-directed learning?
Not at all. It's about balance. We need what researchers call shared control. Teachers, parents, mentors, they provide that scaffolding, the structure, to help learners navigate this massive sea of information online.
So instead of throwing them in the deep end with sharks,
We give them floaties, teach them how to swim first. They still get that autonomy, that choice, but within a framework where they can actually learn effectively. It's a partnership, really.
which kind of brings us full circle, huh? We started with this digital native, supposedly amazing at learning from technology.
And we've uncovered how that assumption, plus the multitasking myth, the learning styles thing, they can actually lead us astray.
So we've busted a few myths about learning today. But where does that leave us? If we can't rely on these, like, easy answers, what can we do?
You know, it really comes down to staying curious and a little bit skeptical. We should always be questioning these assumptions, looking at the research, being open to changing our minds.
Instead of clinging to those comfy myths, even if they sound good.
Exactly. Learning is messy, it's complex. There's no one magic solution for every person or every situation. And that's okay.
Yeah, and just like we're always telling kids to be adaptable, to be open to new information.
Mm,
We got to practice what we preach, right?
100%.
Mm.
Makes you wonder, though, if these learning myths are so common, so ingrained in how we think about education. What other beliefs might need a closer look? What assumptions are we making about learners, about technology, about knowledge itself that could be holding us back?
Ooh, that's a big one. It's like we need to be skeptical not just about what we read online, but also about our own ideas about learning.
And the more we understand how learning actually works, the science of it all, the better we'll be at creating effective learning experiences for everyone.